I was actually born in Las Vegas, Nevada, like 50 some years ago. I'm an old guy. So then somehow we ended up, not that I remember it, but I remember growing up in Michigan. So we first lived in Taylor, Michigan, and then it was, Taylor, Michigan's interesting. We call it Taylor-Tucky. So, and then we ended up moving, I don't know, about 3-4 cities over to Woodhaven, Michigan. And if you're familiar with Michigan, up I-75, I think it's exit 33, you got the Woodhaven stamping plant on the right. I grew up on the other side of 75, right across from it. I could look out my bedroom window. So from 4th grade until I joined the Marines, that's where I lived. So, you know, growing up in the late 70s and 80s, you know, my dad was an auto worker, and my mom back then was, you know, stay-at-home mom. And I have a sister. We grew up in the same house, and you know, did typical kid stuff. But at that time, it wasn't like a housing concrete jungle. We had woods we would run in, tree forts. We did all that kind of mischievous stuff that we did as teenagers. We were talking about it last night. You know, just silly, stupid stuff that teenagers did back then. And then I graduated, and then it was, you know, go to college, go work in the auto factories, or learn a trade, or go in the military. So, you know, my dad, for those that know my dad or knew my dad, he wasn't paying for shit. So my house was kind of, I grew up as an abused child, I guess. Nowadays, you know, my dad was physically and mentally abusive. So when he would lose arguments to my mom, he would take it out on me. So, you know, I'm like, it was always, you know, the world needs ditch diggers too. You're never going to mount anything, blah, 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 blah. So I made the cognitive decision to get the hell away from there as fast as I could. So I ended up joining the Marines. And then probably one of the best decisions I made in my life. So I ended up going to boot camp in San Diego, and it was an interesting experience because I never went to basic training in the Army. So I did my 4 years in the Marines, did Desert Storm, and I think the people I was surrounded by in the Fleet Marine Force in 3-1 out at Camp Horno kind of molded and set the pattern, which was a reoccurring theme throughout my Army career also. So I had some phenomenal leaders. A guy named Leonardo Chira was my squad leader when I was a little snotty team leader. And then I was surrounded by some other awesome NCOs, Hampton and Venable and Peck, and the list goes on that, you know, hey, you know, you can learn by blunt force trauma or repetition. So I did my 4 years. And at that time, the Marine Corps, same with the Army, was cutting down. It was after the war. So I think the Army withered from, you know, like 18 or 15 divisions down to 10. The Marine Corps was cutting people left and right. Everybody, you know, ships were being decommissioned. So I had a choice. I could be an embassy guard or get out. And I'm like, I'm getting out. So I got out, moved to Charlotte, had a job, liked the job. It was a good job. But there was still something missing. So I was going to go back in the Marines. And then at that time, you had to wait for, they called them boat spaces, and it could have been up to a year and a half. And I didn't want to wait. So the recruiter I was talking to took me across the hall to the Army and said, hey, you need to put this guy in. So, you know, it was an Army recruiter. He was an MP. So I'm like, oh, you know, hey. And he's like, well, you can come in as in the infantry. And at the time, I was a 13 Fox in the North Carolina National Guard. And I'm like, yeah, I want to be a forward observer. And he's like, no, you go back in the infantry. I'm like, I hemmed and hawed. I said, give me a couple days. I thought about it. And I'm like, okay. And he goes, you have 3 choices. And I'm like, well, what are my choices? He's like, Korea. I'm like, yeah, no, not happening. Fort Drum. And I'm like, yeah, I don't see that happening too. He goes, or Fort Campbell, the 101st. And I'm like, So I enlisted, Packed up the car, went out to Fort Campbell, civilian clothes, had no Army stuff, because I turned all my stuff into the Guard, and I roll into the replacement in civilian clothes. And I'm like, here's my orders. So luckily, before I rolled out to replacement, I had a friend of mine who at the time was a door gunner on a Black Hawk. At that time when infantrymen could be door gunners, and we served in the Corps together. And I said, give me the lowdown on the infantry units there. And he's like, you got 1st Brigade Bastogne, 2nd Brigade Strike, and 3rd Brigade the Reconnaissance. And he gave me the lowdown. He says, if you want to spend all the time in the field, go to 3rd Brigade the Reconnaissance. I'm like, fair enough. So I arbitrarily, looked on before computers, I found a phone number, and I ended up getting hold of 2nd to 187. And I talked to the Sergeant Major. And I'm like, hey, and I explained, he goes, yep, there'll be a letter of acceptance for when you get here. Come pick that up before you go to replacement. I'm like, okay. So I picked it up, got the letter, went back, checked in a replacement, and then we go to, back then it was, you sit down across from this lady, kind of like we are, and she's like, oh, sweetie, here, you're going to go down to here, blah, blah, blah. It was all paper and stuff back then before computers. And I said, hey, I got this letter for you. And she looked at it, she goes, oh, honey, you really want to go to the Reconnaissance? They're never home. I'm like, absolutely. She goes, okay. And then I went down to the 2nd to 187th. Went to Bravo Company, and I'm laughing because I went to 1st Platoon. And at the time, there was no lieutenant. And I remember this. And I walk in, and my platoon sergeant was gone at the time, Mike Haney. He was a staff sergeant promotable. Back in the day, I think he was promotable for like 5 years. Because it wasn't you have to exhaust, it was just, you could be on the promotable list forever. So the acting platoon sergeant was a guy, Staff Sergeant Rivera. And he was Puerto Rican, and it was like, I couldn't understand him. And he, what I got out of it is, oh, you must be CID or one of those smart college kids. And I'm like, why is that? Because I went to airborne school in the Marine Corps. I didn't go in the Army. And he goes, well, no one comes in here as a specialist right away with airborne wings. So you're either CID or one of those. I said, I've never stepped foot in a college classroom, and I'm surely not CID. So Haney comes in, I think a day later or something. And this is where the mentorship started again. So he sits me down, and he goes, you got 2 choices. You can be a 60 gunner, or you can be carry the 203. I'm like, I'll carry the 203. I carried one in the Marines. And right then it was a straight mentorship. And it wasn't because of me. He just did it to everybody that came in. We didn't have a PL. So he started that mentorship right away. And I wasn't going to really make it a career. I was like, hey, let's give the Army a try. And then I became a team leader. And I had I had a squad leader that came in named Doug Drennan, who was an Echo 51st. He came from Germany. He was telling us all the stories about Lurs and Echo 51st and stuff. So as I'm going through this maturity process in the Army, because it's kind of a culture shock, in understanding the Army way of doing things, Haney was always there, and we had an influx of Marines. There was Cody Stevenson, Corpus, me, met a guy named Wiles, who wasn't a Marine, but he came in from the Guard, and a guy named Jason Buda and Gagnon, and we all kind of formed like the core of the platoon, squad leaders and such, team leaders and such. So, and Haney always kept pushing me to go to Ranger School. He's like, hey, you want to make the Army a career? You go to Ranger School. And I'm like, why? Why do I need to go to Ranger School? And he's like, well, this is what it does. Boom, 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 boom. And I'm like, the wheels start slowly grinding, and I'm like, I'll think about it. So one day I just had this epiphany, and I think it was when we were in JRTC for the 2nd time, and I was freezing my butt off because the temperature had dropped like 30 degrees, and I said, if I can survive this suck, going from hot weather injury to cold weather injuries, everybody, I can do this. So anyway, we got out of JRTC, and I walked in, I said, I want to go to Ranger School. Okay, so, you know, the list, and then we had a division pre-ranger, went to pre-ranger, and then within 2 weeks I was on at ranger school, and then during this whole process, I'm being mentored by not only, you know, Sergeant Haney, but our PL and some other NCOs and stuff. First, I had some awesome first sergeants who were Panama and Grenada veterans. You know, the ones that I had a guy named Atterbury, I had a guy named Rude, Keaton, a bunch of others. And they're like, hey, you need to do this. And I still wasn't going to make it a career. So graduated Ranger School, and then they sent me to PLDC right after. And I'm laughing because I went from a very, you need to accomplish this priorities of work or you don't eat or sleep, to PLDC where it was, you know, don't care if you got the priorities of work done, eating and sleeping is the priority. And I almost get kicked out because I wasn't going to let them eat because the defense wasn't dug in and we didn't have sectors of fire, didn't have my sector sketches in as a platoon sergeant, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, so that was my first experience with non-infantry people. So, but during that, you know, I was getting mentorship from the cadre down there. And then Cobar Towers ignited, got blown up. So we, along with Alpha Company, Bravo Company, got sent over there. And then it was a lesson in itself because now you're going back to the Middle East because of the terrorist threat. We were guarding Patriot sites. And my new platoon sergeant was a guy named Fisher, and my PL was a guy named Jerry Coburn, and I had a company commander named Evans. And that's where I started kind of getting mentorship, kept continuing. And, you know, still wasn't thinking about keeping a career, doing it as a career. You know, I had re-enlisted, and I'm like, yeah, let's give this enlistment a roll, you know. And kept rolling, went through that, and, you know, they're like, hey, this is how you become effective NCO and so on and so forth. And I had a great example what not to do with my squad leader because I was still a team leader. So we get back, and you know, I had been on station about 4.5 years, and I'm like, time to go, gotta go, you know. So I was single at the time, had orders to the 25th. LURS, I was going to go to LURS out there, part of the Doug Drennan influence and mentorship from first sergeants and platoon sergeants and stuff. And I'm like, what's this LURS stuff about? Because my PL, Jerry Coburn, went down to, he was a detachment XO down at the 101st. And I was like, hey, they got cool berets, you know, and they jump out of airplanes. So I ended up getting married, and she could have went to Korea or Germany. So we decided Germany. So one thing that was pounded into my head is make contact and form a habitual relationship with your assignment managers. So at that time, again, before computers, it was phone calls. So, you know, I dial 1-800 Ranger Branch or whatever it was. And then I said, hey, just got married, Army Married Couples Program. She's on orders to Germany. I gave him all the information. He goes, call me back tomorrow. Called him back the next day. He goes, yeah, I got one place I can send you. It's this long-range surveillance unit in the 165th MI out there in Germany. I'm like, and it clicked because Drennan was there. And I'm like, man, it sounds like a plan. So he did the orders, went out there, and I went into a world that I was woefully unprepared for. And not in a bad way. So I get there, and we get there, the family gets there. I report in, you know, I get my car, I go down there and I report in, and I go to the company, and the first sergeant wasn't there at the time. And, there were a bunch of incoming people. And the 3 platoon sergeants were in there, Holbrook, Cruz, and Martinez.
What's Holbrook's first name?
Brian. So, and then you had Christopher Martinez, and then you had this other guy, Cruz. So I ended up going to 3rd Platoon, which it is what it is, you know, but why I was woefully and inadequately unprepared for this is the scope of responsibility, I would say, as a alerts team leader going in. So they're like, hey, you're going to go to, you know, Team 3-1 and you're going to be boom, boom. And I'm like, okay, whatever. So I go in there and then I start reading through the alerts manual and I'm like, holy shit, you know, I'm reading all this and I'm like, wow. And it, you know, I would go home and I would read it and study it and absorb it, you know, because I was good at, you know, I was planning at the team and squad level and understanding platoon and company stuff. But now you're talking about planning and all this other stuff, you know, your insertion, you know, your flight routes and all this other stuff. So I had some good mentors and, you know, I don't know about the other companies, but Echo Company was like a feeder to SF. So, you know, there's this guy, Hampton, that kind of mentored me, a guy named David Sapp and a McKinney, who's no longer with us, and a bunch of other good NCOs that had been there a while. So they PCS'd. We ended up going to Kosovo. And Eric Lane was our company commander, and Ray Devins was our first sergeant. And, you know, now that I'm older, I look back at stuff and I'm like, you know, he was right. So, and one thing sticks with me when we start talking about LRS, and you're going to get a lot of people disagree with me. You know, we're not the SAS, we're not SF, we're not any of those tier 1 operators. You know, it was sneak in, take footage, and run away. And that's what we did, you know, without being compromised, you know, sneaky guys, which comes up later. But you're still an 11 Bravo. You're a basic infantryman. And Lane was every company commander, every leader has a different flavor of leadership. And not better, not worse than anybody else, just different. So Lane's like, hey, this is the 7-8. This is the Infantryman's Bible, and it has a lot of good tips of what we need to do in LRS. And at the time, there was a lot of resistance. Yeah, this is, you know, we're LRS, we don't need to do this. We're cool guys, we wear baseball hats and boonies and stuff. You know, but break contact's break contact, whether you're a rifle squad or a LRS team. So, and that didn't hit me until, God, this, you know, 12 years later, over a decade later. So, we trained up, we went to Kosovo, and I ended up going to 1st Platoon. So I had Martinez as a platoon sergeant, and I had Painter as a PL. And then that's where it just kind of, the wheels started going, light bulbs started going on, boom, boom, boom. And it was, I had, you know, Devins was still the first sergeant, and now Nelson had come in and changed command with Lane. And then all of a sudden, you know, it was, hey, this is how deliberate planning, because you're doing it in a real world environment now. You've actually got people out there who are looking for you to end your life. So, you know, when I had I went in to be an assistant team leader under this phenomenal team leader named Seedig, and I just started, and it just started clicking, because I wasn't in charge of planning as a team leader. I was an assistant team leader learning all this, and he was just a phenomenal planner. And I just kind of absorbed it like a sponge, and boom, 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 just started rolling with it, you know. And it was a phenomenal experience, which served me well later in life. So we did our 6 months in Kosovo, came back, and then we ended up, that was 2000, we came back. We did 6 months down there, came back, and then we ended up maintaining training during the winter in Germany. And, you know, it's Germany, it's cold. So we ended up going down to Vicenza, and they were standing up a LRS unit, and then I went down with the guy with David Jones and a couple other guys, and we kind of walk through E&R corridor and stuff, and, you know, it was awesome experience, interesting, because they're standing up, and they still had that mentality of, by an infantry scout. You know, we're infantry scouts. I'm like, yeah, no, that is different. And then one thing stands on particular, because Jones and I were following him probably, you know, we're probably 200 meters back, 100 meters back talking. And we always took a radio with us to listen to the weather reports, because it changes in a heartbeat like my ex-wife's mood. So I'm like, shit, there's a blizzard coming in, a snowstorm coming in. So I'm like, hey, you know, you guys, I got your timeline, but there's a blizzard coming in. You need to find some place. No, we're good, we're good. I'm like, okay. So we kept walking a little bit, and then the light stuff turned to thick industrial slushy snow. I'm like, here's what's gonna happen. You guys are gonna walk, you're gonna get wet, and you're gonna start freezing. You might as well play it safe and hold it up. So they found a spot, and they were just gonna rough it out. Jones and I set up our ponchos, you know, and we wake up the next morning, and you kind of dig your way out. And they found out through the night that their way wasn't exactly the good way. It was a little mentorship and lessons learned. So we did that, and then ended up being selected to go out to Belgium and did an exercise out there. Went to Belgian Airborne School, which was, the whole Belgian concept was phenomenal because it's hot air balloon jumps. And so did that, and got orders to RTB. And I'm like, I don't want to be a Ranger instructor. No. You know, but Devins had left. Nelson had left. You know, like the whole Kosovo crew was, you know, we're disbanding the band because it's, you know, time for people to PCS. So I'm like, I call Branch. I'm like, hey, dude, what's this RTB thing? He goes, no, you're going to Delta Company. And I'm like, Delta Company, what the hell? You know, he goes, you're going to teach LRSLC, Long Range Surveillance Leaders Course. And this was after 9/11. And no one wants to go be an instructor. You know, I'm like, no. He's like, you don't have a choice. Your COT's not going to get approved, blah, 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 blah. And at that time, my wife had resigned her commission. She was an Apache pilot. So they were already moved. I'm resigning. I don't want to fly anymore. There's going to be a war, blah, blah, blah. So, you know, smart thing to do. So ended up going to Benning. And I go into LRSLC, and the good thing about LRSLC is it's NCO-centric. So now you're surrounded by a group of NCOs they had been successful LRS team leaders, so on and so forth. So I roll in there, and you know, I had Brian Arabinko, Charles Clifford, Gary Carty, a bunch of other guys. A guy named DeMarzo was there, Mike Tully, Lance Cornett, Joe Fry. I mean, it was just like a who's who of just Fox Company, Echo Company, and all the other detachments because they were still around. And so I did my shadowing thing, and I started just absorbing like a sponge again. And you had commo guys like HF guys, David Cachel was there, and you had some intel guys down there doing the packets and stuff, so the MPFs. And then I just started grasping this and walking with teams, you know, kind of right seat, left seat ride. Then I had to go through the course. So I went through when it was still LRSLC, so, well, not RSLC yet, so it was still LRSLC. Went through with a guy named Mike Larson, who was the incoming commander that had to go through, another phenomenal guy, and went through, and then we were fenced in, whatever, you know, the war was going on, and everybody's trying to, how do we get out and get back to the force comm and get out of TRADOC stuff, and then the assignments manager comes down, puts us all in there, and gives us the lay of the land. You're here for 3 years, blah, 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 blah. And then, you know, I'm like, okay, how do we get out of this? So time goes by. The courses are getting, the student population's getting smaller because everybody's deployed. So Larson had this far-reaching idea, you know, and now I look back, it was phenomenal. Change the name from Long Range, you know, LRSLC to RSLC, Reconnaissance Survey, because everybody does some kind of reconnaissance, you know. Just do it different. Engineers do reconnaissance, aviators do reconnaissance, so on and so forth. NBC guys do reconnaissance. So the population now expanded from being kind of LRS-centric to everybody in the Army, you know, and then we had sister services before, Marines and stuff coming in. So the student you know, obviously the class size dropped, so, but we were still running courses and doing MTTs and stuff. So somehow we were sitting around one day and the OCS came up. And I'm like, hemming and hawing, you know, do I really want to be a first sergeant? Nothing against my friends that became first sergeants. I'm like, yeah, no, not so much. So put the packet in, got a recommendation. Larson had already left, but I got a recommendation from him and a couple others. And boom, I'm off to OCS, which was interesting. In itself, it was like standing in my head for, I don't know, like 3 months or whatever like that. Didn't have to bang drum, didn't have to wear the steel pot, you know, I had to wear the stupid ascot. But I still, to today, can't reason why they put senior NCOs in with college graduates who are like, hey, you're automatically an E5. Once you graduate basic training, you're going to OCS. You know, so we got mixed into that Brunswick stew thing. And then I was paired up with a promotable sergeant first class as a roommate, a combat engineer. And at that time, they had relaxed a lot of rules. He would dip Skull and I'd dip Copenhagen. He'd be reading Field and Stream. I'd be reading how the French got beaten in Indochina, you know, and then that's where I made my, you know, I met a bunch of other phenomenal people there. Still, Melanie Stevens is one who's retired captain now. You know, we all keep in contact. And then graduated, went to IOBC, and then it was, hey, I get this email from Mike Larson, who was at the time, I think he was a lieutenant colonel now. Oh no, he just finished ILE. He's like, hey, I got a friend who's got a friend. Where do you want to go? I'm like, I want to go back to the 101st. I go do all that, go back to the 101st as a second lieutenant now. And I'm like, here I am, second lieutenant. We got a house, still married at the time, got a house. And I'm going to 1st Brigade. So I go down there, spend time in 1st Brigade as a PL, an XO, and worked in the 3 shop, which was another phenomenal experience, doing battalion planning, because now you're away from the LRS stuff, and you're learning how a battalion staff plans, and you learn actually, which you kind of neglected in your younger years, that intelligence it drives, you know, missions. And I'm like, oh, I got to work with the S2, phenomenal guy named King. And I'm like, hey, sir, you know, because I'm a first lieutenant. I'm like, hey, what's this? So I'm learning stuff from him and all the other stuff that we gather information from, and it converts, you know, special programs and all this other crazy stuff that was coming out at the time. So we did the surge, you know, went back and ended up getting a rifle company somehow. It was a conversation in battalion commander's office when we were in Beijing. Like, hey, I don't want to go to the captain's career course yet. How do I prolong my stay? Brigade commander comes in, McBride, and he goes, hey, and then he's like, we're trying to figure out how he goes, you want a company? I'm like, absolutely. Because what first lieutenant's going to say, I don't want a company. So I ended up being a company commander for a while down in, you know, same battalion, but I had Charlie Company. And then I had another break. So I was coming out of command, and I didn't, and I didn't know, he explained it to me, my assignments guy, who came from Echo 51st, who was my assignments manager, who worked with Gary Carty, who we worked together in LRSLIC, RSLIC. So it's that LRS kind of thing going. So he's like, hey, I got to pull you out of command, because once you're 12 months command complete, finish career course, you could go anywhere. I'm like, fair enough. He goes, if you go to Knox, to the Armor Captain's career course, I'll send you anywhere you want to go. I'm like, I want to come back to Campbell. He's like, done. So I went up for 6 months to friggin' Purgatory in Fort Knox, and I met some phenomenal people up there, fellow captains. And I had a phenomenal instructor. I had two of them, an Australian major and a Marine Corps tanker major. I had DeMarchi, who was the Australian major, and I had Major Dorn, who was the Marine Corps major. And then the rest, you know, there were phenomenal instructors, but that friggin' cavalry brigade, the commander, the sergeant major, they were just crap. And I'm like, oh, this is the armor community. You know, you're light infantry your whole career, and you see tankers, and it's like, dude, what are those little flappy things on your boots? Why are you wearing that stupid cowboy hat? Yeah, I'm like, what? And it was, you want to talk about night and day. The course information was phenomenal because now I learned about logistics for vehicles and planning orders with dismounts of Bradleys and all this other stuff, which you don't think about being in the 101st, you know, as a light infantry air assault guy, or in Lurch. You're like, hey, I got everything on my back, we're good. We'll just drink water out of the paddy. We got a water filter. We'll just build a squirrel pole, and we'll live off dead squirrels and rabbits, you know. So had a run in there with a sergeant major who didn't like what I said to him, because he said, you'll stand at position of parade rest when you talk to me. And I'm like, I'm like, yeah, you don't threaten me. I'm like, that's not how this works, Sergeant Major. And then he, oh, you want to see the battalion commander? I'm like, let's go. So then he tried doing his, you know, I'm 5'8", 235-pound tanker, you know, and I'm thinking, you can't pull any muscle because you can't pull fat, so I'm really not worried about it. So, you know, I went through with some phenomenal guys, and then I had orders at the end to go back to the 101st. And I had a couple choices. I could have went down to Bragg, or whatever it is now, Liberty. Could have went up to Fort Lewis. There were 2 Corps Lurch units up there, and I'm like, I need to get back to Campbell. The family's there. I'm still married. He's like, you going on the 4th Brigade, the Curhees, or the Pathfinders? And I'm like, Pathfinder is as close as I'm going to get to going back to a Lurch unit. I'm like, I'll take the Pathfinders. I go to the Pathfinders, and it was no fault of the incoming chain of command, no fault of the guys there. It was a mess. And when not personnel-wise, phenomenal people, but they had taken this company and they had broken it up in quarters, and they sent them to different points in Afghanistan where the different aviation task force were in charge. They were assigned to those. So the company commander and the first sergeant had nothing to do. They didn't have a company. So the company commander left sometime during the deployment to be, I think, the general's aide. The first sergeant came back because he was hurt, but he got back to Campbell, was jumping for his star, for his wreath. And I'm like, you know, that old NCO mentality comes back, and I'm like, what the hell's going on? So luckily, when I had my orders, and I was coming back every weekend, I reached out to the interim commander, a guy named Tom Buller, and I said, hey, I have no right to ask, but would you like to get together and discuss a way forward for the company? Because I don't want to repeat what you're doing. So I met Tom Buller, and at that time, there was probably, including Tom, 6 officers in that company. And I'm like, 6 officers? And, you know, I'm like, what's going on here? 6, 7 officers? You know, and I'm like, hey, okay, so we kind of plotted a way forward. And I'm like, hey, and I'm like, I am not the commander, you're the commander. Here's my advice, but you do what you think is right. So I'm a big dry erase guy, board guy, and we started doing stuff. You're going to the range here. We got to do this every quarter, every semi-annually. And we started doing some reverse planning stuff. And Tom, I can't say enough about Tom. He's one of those guys, you know, that just phenomenal, just a great person and just a phenomenal leader. So, and then I was out running PT one day, and I'm like, you know what? That's an awful lot of non-tab lieutenants. So I was coming home one weekend, and I asked Tom, I said, hey, it was like 2 weeks before graduation. And I said, hey, can we get the lieutenants and the platoon sergeants together in one meeting? He's like, absolutely. So I come rolling in, and I had asked Tom, and I'm like, hey, this is what we have come up with the way forward for the company to get us from here to, I think it was 10 months away before we deployed, before the torch party, the torch party went. And I said, this gets us up to Thanksgiving block leave. And any questions? And because I like to train, and it, as not just a company commander, but as a leader, you're responsible for making sure you do the best you can before you deploy. So, and I said, here's the side note. If you're an officer and you don't have a tab and you're an infantry officer, you got two choices. You're going to go back to school when I come there, or you pack your bags and find something else. So it was like a mass exodus. I came back in and I had Tom Buller and a guy named Wolford, and that was it. And it was me. And, some of the platoon sergeants were leaving, their platoon sergeant time was up. So I come rolling in and I'm like, oh, look, we got no officers. And I'm like, yes. And nothing against my fellow officers. I love platoon sergeants. And I'm like, because you don't have to train them. Hey, and I came in and I said, what's wrong? How do we need to fix it? And you get the answer from them. So after the change of command, I talked to the officers, talked to the platoon sergeants, talked to the officers and the platoon sergeants together, and I went down to the enlisted guys. And I rolled in, and they're all standing there. I'm like, let's go find someplace comfortable. So they're grabbing chairs in this bay and everything, and I sit down and I pull up my can of Copenhagen, and I put this big fat dip in, and they're kind of looking. I'm like, yeah, I'm not your typical company commander. And I gave them a little bit of the background. I said, what's screwed up, and how can we fix it? I said, I don't want to hear anything. You don't like your team leader, blah, 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 because you have personality. I said, I don't care about personality clashes. And then I showed them how I want to rearrange the company, not the Pathfinder teams, but I wanted 3 platoons with X amount of squads with machine guns attached, independent operation stuff, decentralized. So we kind of went forward, and we had a rigorous training schedule, and we started getting new lieutenants in, and then, we're getting, as they say in the office, we're getting a team solidified, and then we ended up moving to the other side of post, and we went from there. And then I was doing some soul searching one day, and I'm like, what are we deficient at? We're deficient at reconnaissance and surveillance. So luckily, a lot of the platoon sergeants were either from JROTC or they were ranger instructors. So I wanted to incorporate this LRS stuff in, and long range HF comms. We were sending teams or platoons to NTC. They'd shoot comms back to Campbell, just to keep that skill set. So, it's part of the Pathfinder, back then, since they're gone now, doctrinal stuff is, you're looking for LZs, DZs, all that other stuff. So we didn't do any Hollywood jumps. It was all combat. One jump was Hollywood, then rest was combat equipment. Spent a lot of time on the ranges and stuff, but it was like I was like, hey, this is what we're gonna do. Let me know when you're done. And I would let the platoons and the platoon sergeants train their platoons, and I would just kind of follow along until we got to the live fire ranges, because the company commander's got to evaluate teams and blah, blah, blah. But my philosophy was, if the lieutenant and the platoon sergeant are out there with these fire teams, these squads in combat, and they're trusted with this, why can't they evaluate them? So I would let the PLs and the platoon sergeants, I always go along for the walk because I wanted the steps. So I would let them evaluate, and I'd be like, okay, this makes sense, blah, 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 and then I would go out and do the squads, and I'd let, Tom Buller, XO, we ended up getting to keep him. Somehow we finagled the deal, put off his captain's career course until he got back from deployment, and I don't know how I did it. And then we had another guy come in. He was a Pathfinder instructor named Jimenez. I'm like, I'll take him too. And we got him delayed from PCS. It was crazy. So I was, but I didn't want to take anybody from the other Pathfinder company that they were homesteading, when it's time to move on and, see the Army from a different perspective. So it was a motley crew. I had phenomenal kids, and I call them kids because I was probably 25 years older than all of them. Just phenomenal kids, from the lowest private on all the way up to Tom Buller. Good first sergeant, great first sergeant. Administrative wise, I did the tactical stuff. He did the paperwork, and I loved it. I focused on the tactical stuff, and we got along great. So, and then I had, we figured out how we're going to geographically disperse the company in Afghanistan, and then Tom and Runkle's team were going down to Kandahar, and I took the rest of the company up to Wolverine under a guy named Colonel Albus. Prior service guy, prior enlisted, 82nd Airborne, Ranger Tab, steel pot, M16A1, got out after his enlistment. I think he went to UMass, came back in as a professional aviator. Phenomenal dude. Just, I can't sing his praises. Sergeant Major Gibson, we butted heads in the beginning, but another phenomenal dude. And I had there was a culture shock, because when we went to NTC, you see the pilots rolling with these Yeti coolers off the aircraft, and I'm like, hey, what? They're like, man, we're in aviation. We're in the infantry. And I'm like, you know what? I like that idea. So when we started doing the loadout for Afghanistan, it was like, hey, this is what needs to be put in these connexes. We had these big, long ones, and we had the little, gray or the green ones, and we split them up. And I'm like, this is the packing list. This is what we need to take. After that, it's free game, as long as you don't take any personally owned weapons, any ammunition, anything illegal. But if it gets broke, the government can't. So they're PlayStations, Nintendos, Xboxes, big screen TVs, because we saw pictures of where we were living. It was an aviation fob. And I'm like, dude, this is phenomenal. So we get in there, and it was like, you got 18, 19-year-old kids like it's their first apartment, So we roll into Afghanistan, the two different things. And now I look back, and if we had foresight, but we could never account. One thing you can never account for is leadership, personality, and backstabbing in the officer corps. So before we left, we had come up with this plan how to split the company. And one thing I promised the company I would never do was leave before we got back, like the last commander, or have them assigned, not attached, but assigned to another task force where it took any administrative actions out of my hand. I couldn't do awards, I couldn't do evaluations, I couldn't do UCMJ if I needed to. I wanted to retain that because you build these bonds. And when kids do stupid stuff, and I'm like, I remember when I was a private, I'm like, ooh, you probably, let's talk. Don't need to do this again. You're not going to get let's just don't do this again. Next time, you'll get in trouble, but this time don't. Okay, sir. And it is what it is. So I should have realized after this meeting with the S3 of, I think it's 217 Cap, Pale Horse, he was sent over by his battalion commander, a guy named Riley. And you would expect more from Riley. He's a prior service ranger from Ranger Battalion, CIB, free fall. You would expect more from an NCO, prior service NCO. And he's like, so DDA comes over and does his, he's like Darth Vader doing the Sith Lord's bidding. And he's like, I'm like, yeah, I am not giving up control of they're mine, my company, my detachment that's going down there to you, or it's not going. I want to, and I explained it out. And Albus and Gibson had my back, and, Buller's kind of looking at me, because I'm like talking to this major, like, screw you, buddy. It ain't happening. And he goes, well, you know, I don't think my boss is going to be too happy about this. And I said, sir, I don't really give a shit. So he goes back, and I don't remember what transpired, you know, after that. But Riley gave us this one over the world, Arghandab Valley is the key to this. And I'm like, whatever, dude. So we deploy, Buller gets there, and I get up to where I am, and we're up in the mountain, we're up in the mountains, and we got snow. Our first patrol, we're getting snowed on like we're in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. Buller's down in the Reg Desert doing great and wonderful things. They're doing, you know, you can call it LURS missions, whatever, but they were incorporating all the different battlefield sensors and converting into actionable intelligence down there. And we were doing the same, but our fighting season hadn't opened yet because the mountain passes were still snowed in, because we were on the path of, once you cross the Shugar Mountains, it was a straight shot into Pakistan, and the only thing down that way was an SF compound down, I think it was Fob Sweeney. So they're doing their thing down there, and it's, you know, call it Pathfinders, but it's infantry, LURS stuff, you know, converting, planning, you know, actioning objectives and leaving, you know, nothing, we're not going to seize and hold, you know, we're just going to go action. So that team down there was doing phenomenal stuff. And then we started getting better, and we started doing stuff up where we were, and I had a great lieutenant up there named Kyle Ryman, and Waldron. Ryman's out, he's a lawyer, and Waldron's doing stuff, he's on that other side over there. You know, awesome dudes, you know, they probably go, oh, that guy was an ass. They were, you know, you kind of drag your lieutenants into maturity, but they were phenomenal lieutenants. Runkle down in Kandahar, phenomenal guy. And then, you know, things are going, and you get in a battle rhythm. Click, click, click. Teams are doing their thing. As company commander, it's kind of boring, because you're like, you don't want to be like that third wheel on the date. So you kind of, hey, this is, boom, you plan it, let me look at it. And you're just looking at their pace plan, contingencies, medevac. And you're like, I don't really care about your task org, because that's up to you. I just want to make sure, you know, you've done your risk mitigation. And they go do their stuff. And I remember Ryman was out one night, and I was sitting in the TOC with this guy, Sergeant Major, he's a Sergeant Major now, Reyes, he was the operations NCO. And the call comes over the radio, and I'm in there just hanging out with all the kids in the TOC, spitting in my spitter, and Ryman was out in his MRAPs, the MAT Vs, and they got this LRAS, I think, up there, and they see these motorcycle guys coming. And he's like, hey, you know, he's using all proper radio stuff, Torch 6, and I'm like, yeah, what's up? And he's like, we got 2 motorcycle guys going down the Wadi. I'm like, okay, and? He goes, yeah, they got weapons. I'm like, go find them, fix them, and kill them. And it was like, everybody's like looking at me, you know, and he's like, say again. I was like, go find them, fix them, and kill them. He's like, roger that. So they go out, and they find them, fix them, and they kill them. And they do sensitive site exploitation, I think it was called. Anyway, they search the bodies, and they get these documents, and they bring them in. We get them translated, and it's their campaign plan for our area. And basically it was, hey, there's a new unit in, they're actively patrolling, not like the last one, they're actually leaving the FOB, and they're out doing stuff with the Afghans. Be careful. And it was, we're going to remove this commander because he's ineffective, blah, blah, blah. You know, and it was, there was a big FOB up above us, and I'll think of the name. It was actually the battle space owners. It was a guard unit, and I'm like, holy crap! So we get this translated, and this is how the Army comes full circle. My old company commander from Echo 51st, who I kept contact with, was the DCO of the Arctic Wolves, the striker guys out of Alaska. They were coming in, and he was taking part of the brigade up to Kalat, where we, you know, up the Zabul province, up to Klut, where we were like, as a crow flies, 10 minutes flight time. And I'm like, hey, so Tom, I called Tom, I'm like, meet me. So we go over, and Tom and I hook up, and we go in and we start talking to Colonel Nelson. I'm like, God, Happy Hanukkah, Merry Christmas, Happy 4th of July, boom. And he's, reading all this, and he's like, holy shit. So, that's how you come full circle. Your mentor's coming in, and you're like, hey, you're like, Allah. So he gets that, and then they come up, and we go do a meet and greet, and I already talked to Colonel Albus about, I'm like, a phenomenal guy, blah, blah, blah. So we're going through, we're doing our thing. They're still doing their thing down in Kandahar. And it kind of started slowing down there because it was getting hot in the desert, I guess. So, and they were so successful. And this is the Tom Buller and Osmond and Runkle personality. They were so good together. They were just, people will kill the insurgents, but what runs the insurgency is money. And you get your money any way you can. Human trafficking, selling opium, poppies, all this other stuff. So they were trading them, and it had to be tens of millions of dollars. And what they were doing not only came on the radar of, some agencies, but it came on the radar of, the Taliban leadership living in Quetta, right across the border. So, back to this guy Riley, he's out flying around and he sees this trailer covered in this blue tarp out there. And we got to action this right now, got to action this. It's like they're smuggling, a nuclear weapon into the White House or something. So he bullied, because they were getting ready to switch reverse cycle. They coming off reverse cycle. So Riley bullied Buller, basically, if you don't do this, you're getting relieved, blah, 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 into doing this mission. So Buller plans it, gets 2 EOD guys from the Air Force, some Afghani partners. And this is the worst day of my life. This beats being divorced. This beats shattering my wrist on a jump. I would gladly trade everything to be able to go back in time to stop this day. So anyway, they go out and do this mission, and Buller told Runkle, they landed down at this fob down near the Paki border, and they couldn't drop a bomb on it because it was too close to Pakistan. So they go down there to this fob, spin Boldak, and Buller's like, I'll go in with the first lift because this doesn't feel right. So, and he goes, we'll call you. So they land and they go in, and then it happens. IED goes off, boom, 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 mass casualties, mission's done. Riley's flying to spin Boldak. Somehow Buller, and Tom Kai, another phenomenal dude, lands. They Kazovac Buller. They do this. He lands at spin Boldak. They didn't even know he was coming in, so they triage him. And he gets medevac to Kandahar. So I was up at Wolverine, and they're like, hey, you need to come to the S3's office to talk ASAP. And I'm like, what the hell's going on, So we had just finished doing something, and I go rolling in to the XO's office, and I've got my little green book of knowledge, and I see the last four, and I'm like, that's Buller's last four, and I'm like, ooh, what the fuck's going on? And he's like, this, and it was a guy named Hab. And he's like, don't know what happened, but your guys have taken casualties. I'm like, I need to go. He's like, I'll spin up the medevac chase bird and you'll go. So I get in a Toyota Hilux, and I go down to where I'm living, and I've got Jesse Jimenez, my detachment first sergeant up there. I'm like, hey, don't know what's going on. I'll call you when I find out, but we've got casualties. There's a blackout on all communications. Go down, do what you got to do, shut the internet off, blah, blah, blah. And it was I don't know, so don't have the guys call home and say something happened until I get the facts. You know, because it happens. 19-year-old, you know, calls his girlfriend and all of a sudden, you know, the wormholes open up and everybody, you know. So anyway, I get down there and I get in the hospital and I'm, you know, turning all my stuff in and I go to the waiting room and there's a bunch of pilots in there from Black Task Force, Pale Horse, phenomenal aviators, you know, OH-58 guys, and they're like no clue. All they saw was this big fucking black mushroom cloud. So, and Buller's being prepped for surgery, so I don't get to talk to Tom. So I'm waiting and I'm waiting and I'm waiting, and then two of my guys, Evans, and I'll think of the other kid's name when he comes in. They come in and they're, you know, dirty, messy and everything. And I'm like, what the fuck happened? And they take me down and they tell me. And I'm just I'm going from 0 to the 4th of July pretty quick. So I think I said a few choice words. And then it was, I'm going to go find Riley and I'm going to cut his fucking heart out with a spoon and kill him. So this is going on. And the worst thing for me is I don't know what's, you know, there's no information flow coming in. So they came in on the medevac with Osman, and the Air Force had to go get them because they had longer range. The PJs went and got them. They had longer range, and what happened was they landed after, you know, this was the second flight coming in, the second lift coming in. You know, they landed, and then, you know, they were maneuvering, and the second IED explosion went off, and Osman was tossed, you know, probably a good 50 feet. And they got him hoisted up into the aircraft, tried to stabilize him. McMillan, I think it was McMillan Evans get hoisted up with this, you know, the PJ's down there, you know, in this friggin' minefield. They get them up there and they start hauling ass. They were so far out that their low fuel light came on in the aircraft, but they, you know, they violated probably every rule there was and got in. Osman expired, you know, a couple minutes out. So I'm like, you know, I'm starting to break down. You know, I'm like, what the fuck? I'm mad, feeling guilt, angry. I mean, all the range of emotions at the same time. So I'm like, I said, I'll go in and, you know, somebody's got to identify the bodies. So I go in there and there's Osman, and I'm, you know, Osman and I share a common, both Marines, you know, both type A personalities, both hard-headed, you know, it's just kind of like, you know, brothers. And him and Runkle were in there. So anyway, I come out and I lost it emotionally. I'm just fucking crying. And so I tell Sanchez, I'm like, hey, you know, we gotta start doing something, you know, we gotta figure this out. So we start, you know, there's no word on the rest of the company, you know, the rest of the platoon, what's going on. So they start filtering in. I remember Albus and the Sergeant Major coming down, and the rest of the bodies came in. And so I go in there and I identify the rest of them. So I've got, you know, Osman and Runkle are killed. I've got Bullhall, Patton, Ramos, and my medic. Ramos. I got 6 guys, including Runkle and Osman. So I go in there and I start identifying bodies. And I get to the last one. And I'm like, well, there's 5 out of 6. So this is, Eddie Mills. And I'm like, and they're like, yeah, there's nothing. And I'm like, well, you need me to identify? And they're like, sir, there's nothing. Because Eddie Mills took the brunt of the first blast. So anyway, and I'm like, holy shit. So I go out and the guys had come back. And, you know, I've got this fresh image of 6 guys that I had been in command in, you know, almost a year, just about a year. You know, guys who I've met their families, girlfriends, mom and dad, please bring our kid home safe. And I've got all this weight of the fucking world bearing on me, you know, and they're like, hey, I'm like, the last thing you want to do is go in there, and that's the last image you want to remember your friends by. I'm like, you are not going in there. And that was kind of the tone I said it in. They kind of grasped it, said, we'll talk about it later. And I said, right now, I need to see, you guys all need to go back. I need to see the NCOs. So Albus and Gibson were down there, and we were talking, and I can't remember. But anyway, so I said, and Ryman had come down and stuff, and I said, what you need to do now is, I said, you need to go back, start inventorying all their stuff. I said, if you see anything, if you were a parent that would come home, get rid of it. I'll take care of Buller's stuff. So they go do their stuff, and I go in, and Buller's out of surgery, and I'm thankful to God that Buller survived. But it wasn't just our 6 guys, it was 2 EOD guys, Hamsky and Soulsby, and I think 4 Afghans that were killed at the same time, or within those 2 explosions. So, Riley's nowhere to be found. He's probably hiding. There's no one from the chain of 217 down there at the hospital checking on anybody. They're just disappeared, because they were all flying, doing whatever. There's no one in charge in the TOC probably. So anyway, I go talk to Tom, and we talk, and I'm just like, and he is, Tom, I can't say enough about Tom, but he was just broken like I was when he found out what happened. So anyway, he ends up being medevac before we have the ramp ceremony, and they missed a piece of shrapnel in his I think his throat. So they do emergency surgery. Tom goes back to Fort Campbell, where he's doing his recovery, because his leg caught shrapnel. He's doing physical therapy and stuff. So we inventory all the stuff, and then the actual IOs come in, the inventorying officers come in, and they're like, hey, we need to go through the stuff. And I'm like, okay, give me a couple minutes to go check on some stuff. So I go, and I'm like, you guys good? They're like, good. I'm like, okay. I'm like, you get this guy, you get this guy. I said, I'll do Buller, because he's not a KIA, So I'm going through Buller stuff, and for people that are watching this, we're going to see this. Tom Buller was a fanatic about MREs. So I'm like, he's got not half, but field stripped MREs, and I'm like, he's got enough potted meat to last a nuclear winter and stuff, and I'm just like, God damn it. So anyway, stuff that Tom couldn't, like the meat and stuff, I just put it out in the community table out there. So, I'm ADD and OCD at the same time, and now I'm thinking, how do I keep this platoon, this company together? And I'm trying to think at the same time, and I'm just, First Sergeant Sanchez like, you need to get some sleep, you've been up, and I'm like, and I'm like The Walking Dead. He's like, get some sleep. I'll take care of everything. So I get some sleep. I do what a First Sergeant says. I get some sleep. So I wake up the next morning, and I'm like, they had brought up Cato and Waldron, who were for Wolverine, brought them up there to do the personnel recovery missions up there. We stopped, or I should say I stopped all other missions except the personnel recovery down aircraft stuff. Because now I'm down a PL, a platoon sergeant, a medic, a squad leader, an RTO, and a team leader in one explosion, which gutted that whole platoon. Not just by leadership, but this platoon had lost 6 of its close friends they've been doing all this stuff with. So, and I'm like, hey, you guys, we're not doing missions, blah, 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 blah. There's going to be a ramp ceremony up in Wolverine, because that's where the battalion flag is. We're going to get you guys up there. So we get them up there and do the ramp ceremony. And back up. We get them up there, and at that time, it's kind of like, not a big believer in religion, but it was like somebody stirred the pot and said, we're going to do this, so everybody binds back together. So we had a medevac aircraft overspool its and overtorque its engine. We had to go up, secure it, and then The Australians were going to go up with some CH-47s and lift it out later, but you got to take the engines out. So they took the engine out. Guess they put them in one aircraft with the forklift. So we're out there watching this CH-47 come in with the airframe, and then all of a sudden we get an aircraft down warning. So something in the other 47, the load shifted, and the aircraft crashed into right outside a village in kind of this wadi where it was bent like this. So we get spooled up. And the team that got it was the guys from Kandahar that were on. So we go out there and we landed, and I knew then that the company would be okay, because these are the guys from Kandahar out with Ryman's guys from Wolverine, and they hadn't seen each other in months, so they kind of bonded, and I knew things would be okay because of the NCO leadership. It was just phenomenal. So we get back to the ramp ceremony, and then you got to do some shuffling around, and I needed a new platoon sergeant, a PL down there. So I went in and I gave the guys a choice. I'm like, you can have one of these two guys. And they're like, well, I'm like, no, I don't want to be involved in this. This is your decision. Again, that mentorship that I had through the years and LRS and on, let them make their decision and you roll with it. So they came out and said, we would like him. And I'm like, done, got on the phone. And then, the rest is history. So come back. And then I think I'm done. I think I'm good. I'm going to go teach ROTC at Marion Military Academy. No. I get a call. Hey, how'd you like to come down and be the commander of the Reconnaissance Surveillance Leaders course? I'm like, oh my God, the world comes full circle. I'm like, so I'm talking, and it's Gary Carty again, and it's that LRS friggin' hookup, and I'm like, he's the S1 down there, and I'm like, two questions. He goes, what? I said, can I get on Halo status back? He's like, yeah. Do I get to walk patrols? He's like, you're the commander, you can do anything you want. I'm like, okay. I said, he goes, no, this is your phone interview. I'm like, you didn't tell me it was. So anyway, I got the job. So I go down there, and I was amazed and appalled at the same time, because amazed that the school was still pumping out graduates, but appalled at the officer corps that allowed the basic foundation of planning sand tables to disappear. It was all fucking PowerPoint. And I went through this place, and I'm like, and I'm writing notes, and I'm like, okay, here's the first thing we're doing. No more PowerPoint. And they're like, what? And I said, I'm a PowerPoint Nazi. I spent 14 months on staff in deployment. And I said, if you do one symbol wrong, that means you're copying, and they're going to be all wrong. You can't walk people through the terrain. I said, I want sand tables built. Boom. No more PowerPoint. No more PowerPoint. No, they can use laptops, but when they brief, they're not reading. They're not going verbatim, paragraph 1. Weather, light data. I said, no. So I went through, and I just went back to everything that I was taught, not only when I was an Echo 51st by those NCOs, but when I was a LRSLIC and RSLIC instructor as an NCO by all those phenomenal NCOs. I just brain dumped and reinstalled it. And I went back and redid the ORs, what were critical tasks and planning, and I did it all, and I went back and I asked the NCOs, what do you guys think? And they're like, hey, this is good, change this. So I got rid of all that technology crap. So it was dragging people that were in their comfort zone with planning with laptops into, okay, now you got to write on 3x5 cards and memorize shit and explain the stuff. So it was interesting to see how that place had gone from the basic, LRS stuff of planning, which is the foundation of everything, to kind of, we'll just do a PowerPoint and we'll do a ConOp. I'm like, no, it's ConOp's a concept, the operation. It's not an op order. There's a difference. I said, as the Army, we got lazy of op orders because Con ops were something that were during the initial invasion where you would go as a battalion commander right here on the hood, hey, this is where we are, this is what I need you to do, who, what, when, where, why, boom, bang, go. You know, when the company commander would get his PLs, platoon sergeant, first sergeant, hey, this is what we're gonna do, boom, and it was quick. Here you got time to do deliberate planning. There's no con op. It's a concept of the operation. Who, what, when, where, and why. It's you briefing me back. Yeah, this is the concept. I understand. I'm like, I want an op order. I want a brief back. No, dude, this is. So there was some, I wouldn't say arguments, but some heated discussions. I'm like, no, dude, I don't care. I said, I get it, but this is the way we're going to do it. Because what if the power goes out? How are you going to, so anyway, I was there for a while, and then it is what it is. You know, there was a 15-6, and then I ended up going up to brigade staff, and then, you know, I was like, whatever. And, you know, the ones that know me know about the 15-6. It was pair of lost nods, you know, but the commander always suffered because it was during a Walker changeover. They just counted the bags, never physical, you know. And then I was just following the guidance, lock them down, and yeah, as a commander, you know, you always get screwed. But I also found out that, again, the officer corps is bad, not everybody, but there's, once you attain a certain rank, it's like, oh, I need to protect my stuff. So, you know, it was interesting. I still got the 15-6, you know. I still laugh at it because it's in my man cave. But that's where I also learned that lying to your commander to protect the first sergeant is not a bad thing. You know, you're gonna try slaying a guy that's been in 18 years without any evidence, and you want me to rat on him? Not happening, dude. Not happening, Hayes. So I went up to brigade staff, and the brigade commander was a good guy. You know, he listened to stuff about the 15-6 and the rebuttal, and, you know, it disappeared. The whole 15-6 disappeared, but he wanted me to stay on his staff, and I get it. So I did that, and then I had enough of being in the cavalry. It was when that brigade commander left and we got the new guy in, I'm like, I need to get out of here. So I called the assignments manager again. We were lieutenants together in Iraq, and I ended up going to teach ROTC at Appalachian State for 4 glorious years at App State, and it was probably as a guy who was going to retire, still up in the air, that had been a company commander since 2009. Now we're into 2014. So I was a company commander for like 50 some months, and I'm like, I need a break. So I was physically declining. I was mentally just a basket case. I got up there, and I was, you know, I still had a lot of hate and guilt from Afghanistan, but the thing that kept coming back to me was those shitty times, and I say shitty laughingly, that I spent in LRS, in Echo Company, with those NCOs. No matter how bad it is, it could always get worse. You need to persevere. And my last platoon sergeant, a guy named by Christopher Martinez, was, hey, it can always get worse, but it's going to get better sometime. So I thought back to all that stuff when I was a LRS guy, and I would laugh, like when I got shocked on the electric fence, when I landed in cow shit, when I jumped into Belgium, you know, all this stupid stuff that just happened when I was in LRS. But as young LRS soldiers, we persevered and planned our way in courses of actions and mitigated stuff, and we got out of it. So, you know, I look back, and it, you know, they offered me Hood, Riley, or Bliss, and I'm like, I'm done, I'm retiring. I saw it was what it is, but I look back at my LRS time. In my LRS time, not just in Echo Company, but as an instructor, as an enlisted guy, made my officer life so much easier when it came to planning, when it came to risk mitigation, course of action decisions, op orders, plan, all this other stuff. You know, was I deficient in areas as an officer? Absolutely. My S3 XO Major Mark would just kill my stuff. It looked like a red pen, bad. And he just handed me the 3-0 operations manual. He goes, read this. And I'm like, oh my God, but I had that foundation. And going back to the Marine Corps, I had that NCO mentorship that made me seek challenges. And when I was really good at Campbell, then I went to LRS, and I would say I was below the power curve, And then I had that mentorship, and when I got it, when Martinez became my platoon sergeant, and I stopped being a bullheaded little shit, and I was like, whoa, this works. And I was listening to Nelson and Ray Devins. It was like, hey man, this. And then I had a guy named Frederick Allenbaugh, and he was a planning, and I was like, it started clicking, but. I look back at my career and everybody's like, what was your best time? I'm like, officer enlisted. Because the best time in my life was a LRS guy and a Pathfinder company. They're symbiotic. They were the same thing. But if it wasn't for being a LRS guy in Echo 51st, all that stuff that I accomplished afterward would have never happened. Just because of the caliber, not just NCOs, but the caliber of people I worked with, because it was so enlisted NCO-centric. And I think that kind of, that mentorship, that bonding experience is what's sorely lacking when it comes to officer-NCO relationships. That's why I got along so well with NCOs, not officers so much. Unless you were like a prior service guy like Elvis, I could sit and talk to a sergeant major and say, hey, dude, this is what we're, and there was no rank with me. But that LRS experience paid bonuses through my, I think it was almost 30 years career. And it still does today because I teach JROTC. It allows me to sit there with these kids and go, oh, you want to take a field trip? Okay. I need a who, what, when, where, and why, and I need you to do this, 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 and this. And it's a mentorship process with them. Whereas you don't really get into that mentorship process as an officer if you're straight commissioned out of ROTC or West Point without any prior service. Probably tell you're a captain and you've had some time with a good platoon sergeant and a first sergeant, good NCOs that teach you how to mentor. So that's pretty much how it worked out in my life. Currently I'm the serving president of the Long Range Reconnaissance Association, the LRA. So, this came about, 2014, it was just a bunch of guys talking, hey, we should get together and have a reunion, a gathering of LRS guys, kind of, because at that time, it was all LRS units had either were being folded, disbanded, or had been. Excuse me. So, we knew it was, it's kind of like Doolittle's radar. You got to select few. So it happened during Ranger Rendezvous, and we gathered at, I forgot what hotel it is on, I think Exit 10 or something, Airport Thruway. So, again, it was, I showed up, Sean McCartney showed up, Marshall Huckabee, Brian Holbrook showed up, and I forgot to, Brian Holbrook was another mentor of mine. So there was probably 30 of us or so, and then we're like, hey, we need to do this every year. So somehow, in that process of a year, it went from just gathering to, hey, we're going to do this at Branson. And I think, if my memory, Gary Linder was on point with it. So it started out, and I was talking to one of our members yesterday. He's like, how did it start? I'm like, the first year, 2015, I said it was a mess. We got the Branson, there were no tents. It was like, hey, pick a hotel room, blah, blah, blah. And it was an evolution, it was, now we have the 2 hotels, we've got tents, we've got vendors for food, water, drinks, everything. So, it was designed or thought of to bring pre-Vietnam era guys, and I would say us Cold War guys and beyond, the global war on terrorism guys, into a group who had served in long range patrol, LRPs, or LRS. after it was reconstituted. And, because we all share a lineage. So like the Pathfinder Company. The Pathfinder Company I was in command of, lineage isn't back to Normandy. It was back to the LRP for 101st, Gary Linder's old unit, which became the detachment of the 101st. And when that detachment went away, it became the Pathfinder Company. So there's lineage all over, whether it goes back to the divisional LRP guys, the lettered company guys, so we all share a commonality. So we're going to have paying members, and we're going to have guys that are not paying members on social media. So we had the high site in the base camp. And Marshall was the first president. And, like any organization, you go through growing pains and you learn as you grow. And so it went, and then Marshall, Tim Speece became the president. And old Timmy Speece, I can't say enough about Timmy Speece and Marshall. Marshall got it off the ground. It became a nonprofit. And then Tim Speece became the president, and he continued the ball rolling. And he was he's a retired sergeant major, and it was like boom, 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 boom. And we got MailChimp for mail, we got Dropbox for historical documents and everything. Very forward thinking. And Tim is phenomenal, and then I ended up, being elected to president, and like the guy I talked to, how did you know? I'm like, I talk to Tim all the time, when I got elected, and Tim there was nothing to hide. It's for the good of the organization. So he's like, well, what's your end state? And the end state is to have a functioning organization where we reach out and support each other, not just the one time a year. It's because we're a nonprofit. If you're a coach on a team, and you ask, the officers get together and say, hey, Josh King would like $1,000 donated to his daughter's, JRTC. We vote. Yep, here's your $1,000. So the organization has placed benches at Branson, down at Fort Benning, trying to get one put in at, what is it now, Fort Novasil, which used to be Fort Rucker, in the Army Aviation Center of Excellence, because they're the ones that saved guys like Marshall when they were wounded. We have a paver put in at down at Fort Moore, which used to be Fort Benning down there. We're going to get one put in the College of Ozarks. So we're leaving our historical mark in places where public can see it. And it's the hardest challenge with the organization is getting the global war on terrorism kids that were in the BSFBs to join. And it's, so this is 2024. So, they're probably in their mid-30s, 40s, somewhere around there. And it's hard at that age to understand the concept of why these organizations exist. And it's because they're tied up in their lives with families, work, and even if you can't come to the rally, we get it because of work, family, stuff like conflicts. But join the organization, and you're going to be the legacy, because eventually our membership numbers, like the Doolittle Raiders, are going to decline. So, and it's not we want members because of money. We just want that membership, the membership to expand, as we call the brotherhood, because we did a job that was unlike any others. You were an enlisted guy with 4 or 5 other guys, and you were tasked with this mission planning and go forth, do great things, and find stuff. Don't get caught. And no other job in the Army, unless you're on that other side of the fence, did that. Battalion scouts really don't do it. Oh yeah, they scout, but they're like, oh, we're going to go out 500 meters, and yeah, no, we were jumping in. They say eyes behind the lines. So it's to carry on the lineage of the Vietnam guys, because they're getting older, and then to carry on the lineage of us Cold War guys, and then us global war and terrorism guys, to carry that lineage on until, like the Doolittle Raiders, you got the last guy left. He locks up the silver mugs, closes it, and retires the colors. And it is it's a phenomenal organization, and that is I go to a couple reunions a year, try to, and that is one that I clear my calendar for every year. That one and the Pathfinder one. The only two that, and if I had to pick, you can't. It's just they're both, but but that one in Branson is one I look forward to every year. It's like Christmas, Hanukkah, the 4th of July, Thanksgiving, Halloween all rolled into one. It is just a phenomenal experience. And if you've never gone, you need to show up because it's one price all inclusive, but it's just the people you meet. And it's not just the Vietnam guys. Everybody has a different story. You listen to them talk and it's shared experiences, but different units. And it's just, you got the 9th ID guys in their little tiki bar over there. You got the Echo 51st guys, the Fox 51st guys. It's just phenomenal. And you've got guys that have spent their whole career in LRS, like Shaky Allenbaugh. The guy probably was in every LRS detachment, So, but it's a nonprofit. We donate money to charities, organizations, try to keep the LRA brotherhood alive. And it's just, we're there for each other. And when somebody passes, we go to the funeral, donate flowers and stuff. So it's I can't say enough about the people that are part of the organization, not just the officers, but everybody else that chips in and says, hey, what needs to be done? I'm happy to help because I have spare time. It's kind of like volunteering. So yeah, that's what the LRA is about.
What would you, if someone doesn't know anything about LRP, give me a common, if you can, kind of description of what that young 19-year-old person is probably like.
Oh my God. So one, for our generation, that young 19-year-old guy is a volunteer. Joined the Army, volunteered to go to airborne school, and then he got the LRS, and he volunteered to stay in it because LRS is, everybody's like, oh, it's that. LRS releases people for standards. So you are a type A testosterone-filled knuckle dragging guy with I like to say critical thinking skills. You're gonna learn fast on that job like I had to, Luckily I was older than 19 years old. My 19-year-old self probably wouldn't have survived. But that is you as a 19-year-old, your responsibility on that team, no matter what your position is so much more than, and not to belittle line guys, it's so much more than a line squad leader. You are responsible either for communications, for observation, or you're responsible for a hide site or a surveillance site, and you're responsible for that element, and you're responsible for making commo windows, keeping eyes on the NAI, the objective, 24 hours, 7 days a week, responsible for making snap decisions. Do we stay or do we go? Have we been spotted? Have we been compromised? Route planning. It is everything that a staff does rolled into a 19-year-old doing and producing. So, whenever we would get guys, when I was a commander, said, yeah, I've been in LRS. I'm like, okay, I can count on you to plan. I can count on you to make it to where we got to go, even if you're the last guy, because that's just the mentality instilled into you. It's just, hey, did you plan? You don't have to double check anything they do. You just give them guidance and they come back and go, hey, Sergeant, I'm done. You're like, okay, good. That's it. And it is, the level of responsibility is just phenomenal, So it's just, it's kind of hard to explain. As a team leader, an assistant team leader, you're planning on the level of a career course graduate. When you get down into the scout observer, the two scouts and the two RTOs, you're still planning on the level of a battalion staff. You're responsible for commo windows, all this other stuff. As a scout, you're responsible to figuring out, hey, is this can I observe the NAI from here? Do I have standoff? Am I more elevated? What's my field of view? Looking at stuff we really didn't have. Terrain products, you had to do it on the 1 to 50,000s, 1 to 25,000s. But as we progressed, we could pull up imagery, and all that stuff, planning routes. And you're a 3-time volunteer, and your level of responsibility is just enormous, especially when you go out and you do it for real, because it's you, 4 other guys, and it's you and a radio, and that's it. And it is a true, you have to rely to the person on your left and right because there's no mass behind you. So the Army always comes full circle. So when you look at how technology affects the battlefield and intelligence drives operations, they can complement each other. And I think eventually, maybe LRS will come back because our European allies still use it, but you can use it in conjunction with technology. But the thing with LRS is it's a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week, all-weather asset. You can't, when the cloud cover hits and stuff, you don't see drone footage when the ceiling's only at 300 feet in Ukraine. It's some dude on the ground peering through his optics going, that's the tank column, this is what we're looking at, and eventually it'll come back. But the problem is all those lessons learned, where do you get them from? So that's part of the challenge. How do we keep those lessons learned from guys that have done it throughout the years? So.
Last question, what is, talk about the, not brotherhood, but just basically how tight those small units. I say small because I was in a detachment, so we were small. But we were so tight. After that, I'd never been around anything where everybody was so tight. Did you have that experience?
So I would, I look at it from two sides. I'm looking 15 years as an enlisted, 15 years as an officer. So the thing that makes it so tight as an enlisted, because you're there for 3, 4, 5 years, as an officer, you're jumping duty positions every year, 2 years. I was fortunate as a officer to prolong my stay in certain places. Usually you don't get that. So that's, I spent my whole officer time in the operational time was spent in the 101st. I got lucky. If I didn't have those habitual relationships for guys that served in LRS that were assignment managers, I would have been jumped division to division. So it's hard to maintain that closeness. As an enlisted guy, looking back, I think LRS is a job of ability, not of rank. And I've always carried that forward. Because you have to be able to trust that person. You're going to have, no matter what kind of unit, and you're going to have personal conflicts because we're human. You may like Ohio State, and I'm like, I hate you. I am a Michigan fan. But when it comes to the profession, as long as you keep it professional, you're going to build that bond. And you build that bond by repetition. You build that bond through planning. You build that bond through doing exercises. You build that bond through just sheer pain and agony of being stuck out in the freezing snow, and there's no resupply coming, and you're all huddling under 3 poncho liners together. You build that bond because it's you and that's it, you and the other guys. The only other time, and I still keep in contact with, guys I served with in LRS, and I see them at the rallies, on social media and stuff. I post a lot of stuff on social media. It's kind of to poke the bear, but I check up on guys I served with, like Hofer and stuff. I'm kind of a stalker. I'm like, hey, these guys doing okay? Because it's kind of that leadership thing. Hey, they doing okay? They need help. As an officer, there's only 2 places I've ever felt that. One was when I was in command of Charlie, 1st 327, just because I carried that NCO LRS mentality forward. And when I was a Pathfinder Company commander, because I carried that LRS mentality forward. And it was hands-off leadership. I am entrusting you to do this. And that's the same thing with LRS. You were entrusted to do this, and that, the biggest critics of LRS guys are on your own team. Yeah, you screwed that planning up when you go into ARs. You should have picked this route instead of this route. You know, like I got hammered to the wall one day by my team. The shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line. It doesn't necessarily mean it's the fastest. I'm like, what do you mean? Going over this stupid hill slowed us down by an hour and a half. I'm like, we should have went around it. We'd been faster. And I'm like, you know what? You're absolutely right. And they're like, learn how to read the contour intervals. I'm like, and it always stuck with me. Those little lessons, contour intervals, contour bypass, and don't go straight, slow and methodical, you know, having that deliberate combat patience is stuff I learned in LRS. You know, don't get, like I used to tell guys when I was a PL or a commander on line, don't get in a heated rush. Don't get in something you can't control. Always have a supporting element in place before you maneuver, you know, and it's stuff I learned in LRS. But throughout, you know, my whole career, I would say Echo 51st was the only place where you had that bond between enlisted people. And you still had a bond with your officers because they were on your insertion extraction platform. The company commander would always come sit in your back brief. And, you know, if you had a good company commander, and when I say good, I'm not talking, hey, he's a phenomenal tactician. Somebody that would sit down and talk to you and go, hey, why are you doing this? And not belittle you like, this is stupid. Oh, this is, hey, why are you choosing this route? And he's not asking you because you're wrong. He's asking you to know how you got to that because he may have a little bit of wisdom. But that whole bonding thing is different in LRS when I talk about like the conventional Army, not you know, SOCOM and stuff like that. That is the only place you're probably going to see that. And it's unfortunate that it's that way, but it's, you know, if you looked at the missions that LRS was tasked to do, that's why you get that bond. And those bonds remain today. And it's just the way it is.